Yes, get ready for the legal dictation containing 720 words at the speed of 90 words per minute. 3, 2, 1, start. Writ petition was also filed initially by BCCI and its erstwhile assignee for striking down Section 3 of the Sports Act 2007 insofar as it relates to cricket test matches and also striking down the notification issued by the central government notifying DD1 channel and DD channel as mandatory channels to be carried compulsorily by the cable operators. In the same writ petition, the notifications notifying the sporting events mentioned therein in respect of cricket to be of national importance were also challenged. Also challenged is the order of the Government of India by which Clause 7.9 was added to the license agreement of DTH services. Clause 7.9 is in the following terms: the license shall carry or include in his DTH services the TV channels which have been notified for mandatory and compulsory carriage as per the provisions of Section 8 of the Cable Television Networks Act 1995 as amended, failing which the licensor shall be at liberty to take action as per clause 20.1 of this agreement. Subsequently, ESPN Software India Private Limited and Star India Private Limited had also been implicated as petitioner numbers 3 and 4 in the aforesaid writ petitions in view of media rights agreement as referred to above. The aforesaid appeal and writ petition were allowed by the division bench by holding that on an interpretation of the provisions of Section 3 of the Sports Act 2007 and Section 8 of the Cable Act 1995, the signals received by Prasar Bharati from the respondents should not be placed in the designated Doordarshan channels which are to be compulsorily carried by the cable operators under Section 8 of the Cable Act 1995. Aggrieved, the present appeals have been filed by the Union of India Prasar Bharati Home Cable Network Private Limited and Sopan Foundation. We have heard learned Attorney General appearing for the Union of India, the Prasar Bharati, and learned senior counsels appearing for Star India Private Limited, learned senior counsel appearing for Home Cable Network Private Limited and Sopan Foundation, learned senior counsel appearing for the BCCI. At the outset, it would be appropriate to refer to and whatever the relevant statutory provisions as such under Section 3 of the Prasar Bharati Act 1990. Prasar Bharati has been established as a corporation to discharge the functions of erstwhile Akashvani and Doordarshan. Under the Section 12 of the Prasar Bharati Act, the primary duty of the corporation is to organize and conduct public broadcasting services to inform, educate, and entertain the public and to ensure a balanced development of broadcasting on radio and television. Section 12 of the Prasar Bharati Act 1990 clearly stipulates that Prasar Bharati shall inter alia be guided by the objective of providing adequate coverage to sports and games so as to encourage healthy competition and the spirit of sportsmanship. It therefore appears that one of the main objectives behind the incorporation of Prasar Bharati is to provide an adequate coverage to sports and games for the purpose already noticed. Specific notice would be required to be taken in the light of the contentions advanced, which will be noticed later, of the provisions contained in Section 12 of the Prasar Bharati Act 1990, which enables the Prasar Bharati to negotiate for purchase of or otherwise acquire programs and rights or privileges in respect of sports and other events, films, serials, occasions, meetings, functions, or incidents of public interest for broadcasting and to establish procedures for the allocation of such programs, rights, or privileges to the services. We may now turn to the provisions of the Cable Act 1995. The object of the Cable Act 1995, as indicated in the preamble, is to regulate the operation of cable television networks in the country and for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Section 3 of the Cable Act 1995 stipulates the necessity of registration as a cable operator in order to operate a cable television network. Section 2 defines cable operator in the following terms. To cable operator means any person who provides cable service through a cable television network or otherwise controls or is responsible for the management. Stop. Yes, get ready for the general matter dictation containing 720 words at the same speed. 3, 2, 1, start. The Employees Provident Fund scheme was introduced by an ordinance in 1952. Later, an enactment came, and in the early stages, the scheme was made applicable only to 6 selected industries which were supposed to have the capacity to pay. Now, of course, more than 60 industries are covered by the Employees Provident Fund scheme. But the Act gives the appropriate government certain powers to exempt certain factories from the operation of the Employees Provident Fund scheme. Thus, the employees in a particular industry are governed by more than one provident fund scheme, as it obvious frequent changes in the place of employment take place and a worker who is today employed in an exempted factory may in due course join a factory where the employees provident fund scheme under the act is applicable, then he faces a lot of difficulties in the transfer of his funds from the exempted scheme to the statutory scheme. It is therefore time that the government did away with exemptions altogether. Then, Mr. Vice Chairman, the need for a comprehensive social security scheme is well accepted in the country. The Government of India some 10 years back appointed a working group headed by Mr. V.K.R. Menon, Director of the Regional Office of the ILO in New Delhi. That working group went round the country and produced a comprehensive scheme for social security, and the recommendation was that the employees' state insurance and the employees' provident fund schemes should be merged into one social security scheme, which would also be able to give workers unemployment benefits and old age pension. It is more than 10 years since this report was submitted, and though the government appears to have accepted the recommendation in principle, nothing has been done in that matter. That is probably due to the fact that a number of provident fund schemes are exempted from the operation of the statutory scheme. How will the government merge these exempted schemes into the social security scheme? So, if the government are serious about merging the employees' state insurance and the employees' provident fund schemes, it is time that they did away with exemptions. It appears that the Government of India have granted exemptions where under the law they had no power to do so. That is a wrong trend, and I must voice my protest against this. Then, Mr. Vice Chairman, the management of the employees' provident fund by the trustees needs a great deal of improvement. Now, under this scheme, some 30 lakh workers contribute. Some of them contribute 6% of their meager wages, others contribute 8%. The trustees are so callous that they do not see to it that all the deductions from the workers' meager wages are deposited with the proper authorities in time. The result is that lakhs and lakhs of rupees deducted from the workers' wages as their contribution to the provident fund schemes are not deposited with the provident fund authorities or appropriate authorities. The employers are allowed to convert the workers' savings into their working capital. It is the business of the administration. It is the business of the trustees to see that every rupee deducted from the workers is deposited with the appropriate authorities within the time limit laid down under the rules. What we find is that there are penal provisions, but those penal provisions are not enforced, and employers are allowed to convert workers' savings into their capital. That is highly undesirable. It is also harmful to the workers because unless the money is deposited with the Provident Fund authorities, workers' accounts do not show the contributions deducted from them. The result is that in some cases where the regional directors of the Provident Fund scheme are honest and straightforward, they issue to the workers their account slips without showing the amount due from the employers. The worker who has contributed hundreds of rupees finds that the account slips issued by the Provident Fund authorities show only a meager deposit in his name, and he gets confused, agitated, and discontented, and his heart is not in the work because the money deducted from his wages for his old age is allowed to remain with the employers, and the Provident Fund accounts do not give him credit for that sum.